What's good, Hoopers? Did you injure your hamstring and don't know where to start or don't know too much about it? So we got you covered today. We're going to talk about all things hamstring strains. So stay tuned. What's up, guys? My name is Dr. Marco Lopez, Doctor of Physical Therapy and Certified Strength and Conditioning Specialist, and also co-founder of the Basketball Doctors, alongside with Dr. Gabe Ignacio. Our goal for the Basketball Doctors is to empower the basketball community with evidence-based information regarding all things rehab and performance. So please subscribe to our channel, like, comment, and share with friends. All the information that we have here today is just for educational purposes only, not medical advice. So if you need medical advice, either seek out a healthcare professional or seek out us. So let's just jump into the topic of hamstring strains. So before we start talking about hamstring strains, let's just go over the basic anatomy of the hamstrings. So the hamstring muscles are a set of group of 4 muscles on the back of the leg. So the 4 muscles are the semimembranosus, semitendinosus, bicep femoris long head, and bicep femoris short head. So 3 of those muscles, the bicep femoris long head, semimembranosus, semitendinosus, they both start from the hip, go down to the knee. So they extend the hip and also flex the knee. The bicep femoris short head only flexes the knee. So when we think about orientation, the semimembranosus, semitendinosus, they're more on the medial side. So more in the inside part of your leg, as opposed to the bicep femoris long head and short head, they're more in the outside part of the leg. So those are the 4 main muscles which constitute the hamstring muscles. So how do hamstring strains occur? So the strain is actually tearing of the muscle fibers. So these tearing of the muscle fibers could be broken up into 2 main things. Either 1, they're overstretched, or 2, they're overexerted or overworked. So we're gonna go over the most common one first, and we'll talk about the second one. So the first one is overstretched. So when the muscle is overstretched, it causes pulling and it causes stretching of the fibers, which leads to tearing of some of the fibers. So this typically occurs in hamstring muscles when the hip is flexed, meaning if you bend your hip and then you extend your knee, because you're really stretching out the hamstring both at the hip and at the knee. So as you remember, we mentioned the hamstrings cross the hip, so they extend the hip and they flex the knee. So you stretch it out, overstretch it, which leads to hamstring strains when you flex the hip and extend the knee. So typically in basketball, we'll see this when a player is running for a layup and they extend their leg out and they overextend, and when they jump up for a layup and they pull that hamstring. Other things you'll see it is when they're just sprinting down the court, they might take a big first step and they pull the hamstring. You commonly see this in track athletes where they're going into a sprint, they start sprinting, and then when they reach out their leg, they'll go up down and grab the back of the thigh. But the biggest thing is the most common one is you're being overstretched that muscle. The second one is overworked. So if you put too much capacity on the hamstring to the point of failure, it strains itself. So in other words, let's say you're doing a heavy exercise, maybe like a Nordic curl, meaning where you're laying down your body and it's too much for you, then it pulls because the forces are too much and your muscles aren't ready to withstand that. Another one is maybe you're doing a deadlift or a hamstring curl and you're doing 300, 400 pounds and you normally only do 200 pounds. So it overexerts itself and then it strains. So those are the 2 main mechanisms of injury of a hamstring strain. So how do you know if you strained your hamstring? So we're gonna go over a couple signs and symptoms. 1, normally there's a mechanism of injury, meaning like we mentioned before, your hamstring gets overstretched or overworked. When that happens, you hear a loud pop, and that pop means those hamstring muscles or tendons kind of stretched out and led to the hamstring strain. Another thing, once that pop, when you hear that pop, or you might not hear that pop, but you also might experience bruising in the back of your leg, even to the front of the leg, but it's more from the hamstring. Another one is you're gonna have difficulty walking, especially taking out big steps. You'll see if you strained your hamstring, walking is kind of tough. You'll be able to walk, take short steps, but you won't be able to take your normal long steps. Another one is if you try to stretch your hamstring, it hurts. Or if you try to activate your hamstring, it hurts. Meaning if you try to bring your heel towards your butt when you're standing and it kind of hurts, that's a sign of those hamstring strains. Another thing that you might see too is when you sprain your hamstring or strain your hamstring, that you'll feel different, like a feeling in the hamstring whenever you're just doing basic day-to-day stuff, when you're just getting up from a chair, because those hamstrings co-contract with the quad. So a lot of the activities that you normally would do involve the hamstrings, so you'll be feeling it with a lot of your regular day-to-day stuff. We're going to talk about how long you're out for if you have it. So we use a test called the active knee extension test. So this test is really going to tell us how long you're going to be out for. It's been used countless times through studies. So the biggest thing on this test is you're going to compare with your other side. So the active knee extension test is you're going to lay down on your back, you're going to extend your knee while your other leg's laying down. And when you extend your knee, you want to make sure you try to get that knee as straight as you can, and your hips bend at 90 degrees when you're doing this. So as far out as you can, and you're going to feel some tension. Whenever you feel tension, that's where this test stops. So from that measurement, you would ideally measure that and compare that with the other side. So if there's a less than a 10-degree difference between your injured hamstring versus your non-injured, you're going to be out for about a week. That's what the literature says. If there's between 10 to 20, you're looking at 2 weeks. If it's 20 to 25, you're looking at 3 weeks. And if it's between 25 to 30 degrees, that's more of a significant hamstring strain, meaning you could barely lift up that leg. You're looking at 50 days. So it's going to take a little while. And they've shown that most re-injuries of hamstring injuries occur within the first 2 weeks of going back to sport. So you really got to make sure everything's on point. So are you at risk for hamstring strains? So we're going to talk about some of the risk factors. So one of them is decreased quad flexibility and hip flexor flexibility. Meaning if you don't have good flexibility in the quad or the hip flexor, that hamstring is going to be overworked, especially when we overstretch it, so that's going to cause some tensioning. Another one is just hamstring flexibility in itself. If you don't have great flexibility in the hamstrings, as we talked about, the most common mechanism of injury is when you overstretch it, meaning you don't have good length, so it gets overstretched. Another one goes with the lengthening is the strength, especially eccentric strength, meaning you want to be able to control that hamstring lengthening, meaning it has to be strong enough as it stretches out, because if it's not strong enough as it stretches out, it just pulls and tears. Another one is a strong core. Core plays a huge role in these hamstring injuries. Also lumbopelvic dissociation or control, meaning being able to control your spine and your pelvis. That plays a huge role. And the other one they've shown is just overall strength in the muscles in the lower body. So quad, hamstring, glutes, all those muscles play a huge role, especially glutes. If your glutes are weak, that means the hamstring has to overwork, because as we mentioned, the hamstring extends the hip, but also the glute does. So if the glute's not doing its job, the hamstring's gonna be being used more than before, and that's gonna cause a strain. So those are some of the basic risk factors associated with that. Thank you guys for watching our video today. Hopefully you guys learned a lot about hamstring strains. If you liked our video, please like, comment, subscribe, and share with your friends and family. If you didn't like our video, please comment below on how we can improve our video. We are the Basketball Doctors. Let's ball for life.